Hi everyone, my name is Han. I'm currently work for South China Morning Post and I'm based in Hong Kong. I work as a digital graphic designer for SMP. So here I use maps, data visualizations, and other visuals to cover a range of topics in China and Asia. And before joining SMP, I was a graphic journalist at Reuters news agency, where I use visuals to create graphics on current events and financial markets. So for some of you guys may have not seen our work before. This is the online website, including all the digital graphics we have published recently. So you can feel free to take a look. And we are not only working on a lot of online projects, we also create a full page of data visualizations or other graphics on newspapers. So this is a small example. This is about the heat wave in Hong Kong we have published, I think, this month. And this is a back page about how the coronavirus spread in Hong Kong in 2020. So that's around 2 years ago. And this is a graphic about, this is two spread graphic about India and China clashes around the borders. And this is a graphic I create with one of the colleagues. It's about the rainfall in Hong Kong since 1884 until 2020 first last year. So this is almost all the important back pages we have published since 2017. And if you feel interested, this is the print archive of all our graphics. So I think to do the data visualization in the newsroom means we build stories based on the data and we have found and use design to make it look nice and then present the information to our readers. So based on that, these are the major parts of how I did at SMP. So I need to, first thing is I need to collect data, and sometimes I need to clean the data if it's not in a good structure. And then I need to design the graphic layout to make it look nice. And at the end, I also need to use some coding languages or some tools such as Adobe Illustrator or raw graphics, some online tools based on my sketch. So this is in general the workflow of how we develop our graphics. At the beginning, we need to pitch a story idea and do some basic research. And after that, I will start a very simple sketch and show it to my creative director, explain to him like how I'm going to collect the data and how I will structure the story. So it would just be a very simple layout. And if he approved with my idea, I will continue to start to build the access and write the articles. After that, I will build the online pages and send it to the editors for checking. If the editors is happy with it and we don't need to make any changes, I will send it to the digital desk for final checking. So after that, we can publish. And sometimes when some online graphics, we make a print version, then we can publish on the newspaper. I think a lot of you guys might curious how we get the topics about the stories. So this is a simple graphics showing you where our story ideas came from. So as you can see, the little blue dots indicates the projects that pitched by our graphics team. And the little red dots means the graphic was requested by our reporters. So sometimes when a reporter thinks he has some data and it's pretty nice to create an infographics, he will send an email to us and ask help. And so if you can take a look of here, you can see like since last year, majority of the story ideas are from our internal team. So now I'm going to walk through some examples of how we collect the data. I think thanks to the open source contributors, it's way much easier to gather data than many years ago. So this is the example of one of the back pages we have done this year. So this year in April 5th, we received a request from the editors. They hope we can prepare a back page for Chinese Qingming Festival. For some of you guys may didn't know that this is one of the most important festival in China. It is a day that we will spend it to remember and pray for our ancestors and the deceased family members. So, but this year it means a little bit different because Hong Kong, I think a lot of you might heard the news that Hong Kong is quite proud of its success in containing the COVID. But this year in March, the city has seen the highest death rate in the world. So it has much more meaningful for most of the citizens. Some of them may just lost their loved ones in March. So I think that is a very good data point to finish to prepare something for the Qingming Festival this year. So I go to the website of our World in Data, and they have almost different types of data related to coronavirus, like the daily infections of all the countries and daily deaths essential. So I select Hong Kong and also other places which has very high infections. And the website is quite user friendly. And after I select the countries and cities, they export SVG. I can export it as like a SVG or PNG. So with this data and the SVG file, I import it into Illustrator. And then this is the final version of the back page. So it looks quite very simple and easy. The charts I get from our Word in Data almost occupy half of the pages. And then I highlight the lines of Hong Kong. And you can see I also add the annotation of the peak, which is March 14. And I know that maybe the total deaths compared with US and many places is not that high, but if you divide it by per million people, it's super high among the world. So and also in order to get some details and human touch, I go to the Hong Kong government website to get, they have like a very brief analysis of the fifth wave. So as you can see here, I get a breakdown of the deaths by age. So it's easy for the readers to see that majority of the people who die of COVID-19 are above like 17 years old. Most of them are elderly peoples. So this is the situation when it's very easy and quick to prepare a back page. I finished this back page around just within 2 days, and then I send it to the editors for checking. But sometimes you will spend a lot of time on data collecting. For example, I create this project during the Hong Kong protests. I think a lot of you might have heard that in 2019, Hong Kong was hit by months-long social unrest, with thousands of protesters marching along the streets. And during the protests, the chief executive of Hong Kong, which is Carrie Lam, her popularity slumped to a record low. And a lot of people have been questioning where she is during all those important occasions. So to answer the question, I create this graphic. And so the graphic was divided into 2 sections. The first part is how she handled the COVID. And the second part is how she handled the protests. So you can see the little black dot on the top it indicates when the day Hong Kong have a big protest, and the little pink dots are the days when Carrie Lam make a public appearance. So if you hover the red dots, you can see the details. But in order to give a big picture, I also asked one of my colleagues for help. So he draw a lot of nice illustration for me. If you scroll down the graphic, you can see. So this is the first 1 million march in Hong Kong. And on the same day, at the same day, this is well is Carrie Lam. She's busy with all the different ceremonies and celebrations. And if you scroll down, the little chart on top is also moving because it needs to correspond to the same day as I show here. So this is the airport chaos. And at the end of, I picked like around 8 to 9 important events. And at the end of this scrolling graphic, I also did a very short video, including all her public appearance while she is since June 9. That is the first day of the mass protest. And at the end of the video, I also include a little calendars. So it's showing what what kind of events he has been drawing. So I divided into 3 categories. One is Hong Kong related, mainland China related, and protest related. Majority of the time I spend with this project is to collect the data. I didn't spend a lot of time to create the graphics. So at the beginning, I think it will be very easy to get the data, and I think the government will have like place to include all her schedules. But at the end, I realized they didn't do it in like a very well structured way. I talked with one of my colleagues. He also agreed that it's very hard to use Python to get the scripts. So what I did is to go to the government website, and they have a location to including all the press release. So I clicked through all the events related to him, and then I manually input all the keywords like important days, locations, and the events. And then I compile it into the Google Sheet and export it into the CSV to make the graphic. So this is the case when I spend a lot of time in data collecting, but this is not the common cases. So the things I mentioned above are the process when we collect the data by ourselves, but there's also another trend that the reporters can be the data provider. So this is a project we did for the upcoming 20 Party Congress. This is one of the most important events in China because the Communist Party may reshuffle its powers along the top officials. So we build a website like a data bank. We want to show the readers like our reporters' analysis about who is going to stay in office, who will leave the office, and who are the rising stars in the party. So this is actually one little section in the whole data bank. If you have time, you can take a look. So if the readers click through the profile of the officials here, they can see the basic information. For example, the name, how old he is. He is currently work as the general secretary of the party, which is also the leader of China. And then you can see his education background and the hometown. We also create a little map here to showing where his hometown located. I think for most of you guys may didn't know, hometown means a lot in Chinese political system, as top leaders prefer to promote those people who came from the same hometown as them. So if you click, and here we add some 2 little related stories. If you feel interesting of this guy, you can just click the articles to read. And here there is little symbols. It's showing our reporters' analysis about his futures in the party. So for President Xi, the square means he's likely to stay in the office. And if you see Premier Li Keqiang, like our reporters saying, we don't know his future. But if you see Li Zhanshu, oh, he's probably leave the office. So this is just a very simple data bank we create for all the top officials. And if you wonder how his social connection is, you can go click through see connections. And this is a graphic created by my colleague. It showcase all the connections of the top 7 leaders among the parties. So you will know who is knowing who and who has connection with who. And so that is the data bank story. Now, so to create this story, I just generate a very simple Google Sheet to my colleague, and it's almost empty. I just set up the headers for him to fill in, and then he finished all the informations for me. Of course, I did a lot of editing in order for later programming, but it's pretty straightforward and easy to use. I think the cases I mentioned before are major to visualize the data, and the data are numbers and text. But there are sometimes that data isn't not just about numbers. It can just be images, videos, and all different types of format. So this is an example. I'm going to show you how we do the data viz through the images. So I think a lot of you have been heard that India has very bad air pollution, but 4 years ago, there isn't much newsroom doing graphics or database showing how the air pollution is in India. So we're trying to create a simple graphic showing the terrible air pollution in India. We asked one of the colleagues in the Reuters office. He's located in New Delhi, which is India's capital city. So he set up a camera at the top of Reuters office, and it captured the sunspots almost every 1 hour, and it started from October to the start of November. We picked these special days because the Diwali, which is one of the most important festival in India, I think it was on November 7 on that year in that year. And so it was one of the most important festivals. So people start to crack a lot of people play the crackers, and which make the air even worse. So with the help of the colleague, we collect like around hundreds of photos, and then we compile it into a very short videos. So we also gather data from the India government about the actual real-time PM 2.5 data. So we build a D3 chart. We build a little chart here. Sorry. And so if the reader scrolls through the chart, scroll through the page, you can see the actual image of the day, and this is the time and the date when we take the photos, and we including all the good days and bad days, and we pick certain important moments when you can see how bad the air was in India. So, and then we come to the next day of Diwali. So it's very hard to see anything from the photos, and we don't get any data on the day because the air pollution was so bad, the sensors break. And so this is the video we analyze it by hour, and we also include a short graphics showing how the same time but different days can make difference. So this is 11 a.m. since October 20 to November 8. And here is a simple comparison between same day but different hours. So I think this is a good example showing you how the images can help you to create data visualizations. I think not only images can be the data, sometimes your personal data can also be the data source to create a nice graphic. So my hometown was, I currently work in Hong Kong, but my hometown is in mainland China, which is like around 3 hours bus away from Hong Kong. Before the pandemic, I usually travel and I usually go home like around once a month or twice a month. But since the pandemic started, both the mainland side and the Hong Kong side closed the border. So when I plan to travel back and visit my families in 2020, I think it will be interesting to show my personal experience as a lot of people still unfamiliar with how the quarantine goes. And I think China is always famous for its very toughness in containing the virus. So I'm not my strength is not in drawing, so I create a very simple storyboard, and I took a lot of photos along my trips and used the Procreate to add some annotations and build the simple storyboards and highlight all the trips. So this is the hotel I live. This is when I pass the border, and this is when I'm waiting for the bus to pick up to the quarantine hotel. And this is when I check in the hotel. I need to do some PCR tests. So this is the graphic. One of my colleagues, his name is Adolfo Aranz. I think some of you guys may know him. He's a very famous illustrator. So he helped me to create this little nice illustration based on the text I wrote. So this is how I pass the border. This is how I declare my health conditions. And I get a QR code. Then, yeah, this is the little profile of myself. And then here is when I take the bus to the quarantine hotel, queuing. Yeah, this is the bed I slept in the hotel, and this is the first breakfast I have. And here are the graphics how I spent my 14 days in the quarantine hotel. It looks very simple, but I think it's quite interesting and lovely. So this graphic was based on my personal experience. And so the things I mentioned above are the cases when we collect the data and how we get the story from. And now I'm going to introduce you some tools and libraries we often use in the newsroom. I think a lot of you guys might not be unfamiliar with this library. It is one of the most important JavaScript libraries that people will use to create data visualizations. It has a lot of chart type and is super interesting and easy to create the graphics. And this is one of the example I create a back page through this read. So basically, this is a graphic about how the land sales program in Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong is always famous for its super expensive property price among the world. A person can spend like 20 years or 13 years to buy a small, tiny apartment. So I feel very interesting about like why the land is so expensive and how the government sells its land to the property companies. I go to the government website. Luckily, they have all the land sales. They have all the land sales data since 1984. So I started in 1991. As you can see, the little dots, each circle dots indicate one land sale sold through the government land sale program. And the bigger the circle is, the more expensive the land was sold. And the green dots means the land was for residential purpose. And the blue dots means the land was for commercial uses. And if you take a look of the left bottom corner, you can see this is the ranking, the most expensive land was sold by the government until the end of 2021. So they sold this land for around Hong Kong 50.8 billion Hong Kong dollar, which is around 6.5 billion USD, and with only like 48,000 square meters. But I'm pretty sure this year they will set a new high record. So in order to create this back page, I wrote the script with these three in Visual Studio Code. And after that, this is how the first draft of the graphic looks like. It's actually a horizontal chart, and it's around 4,000 pixel wide. I export it as the SVG file, so it will be easily to import into the Adobe Illustrators. And then I use the brush tool of the Illustrator to create this little snake shape, because it looks more interesting than you just show it like a line. And after that, this is the final version of the graphic. So it looks pretty easy and straightforward. I make some annotations of the important period and also get a small legends to tell the readers how to read the graphic. And at the bottom, these are the two small charts showing the private residential property price since 1995. So I think this tree can be very useful, especially when we create the back pages. Because if you study in the Illustrator, it will spend you a lot of time, and sometimes it's not that easy to make changes. And the next one I'm going to introduce you is this JS libraries. I think scrolling is a very common and interesting technique to create storytelling in recent years, and people use scroll a lot in their stories. But if you write a script, sometimes it's time consuming. So if you use the library of Scroll Magic, it will be very easy. It would just be 10 minutes thing to create a scrolling sections for you. And if you combine the Scroll Magic with GSAP, you can make a lot of very nice and interesting animations. I think for some of you guys who may not unfamiliar with these libraries, you can just take a look. So now I'm going to give you example. This is a graphic one of my colleagues did about the mass COVID test in Hong Kong. He used Scroll Magic to create this scrolling graphic. So if you open the graphic, you can see a bunch of people here queuing for the test. And we have a headers and a little paragraph here to explain what is happening. So Hong Kong launch its first universal community testing program on September 1st, 2020. It's 2 years ago. So these are the total people they have found about the new infections of COVID-19. It looks actually a lot if you compare with the people behind them. But if you keep scroll and compare it with the people who register for the mass test, they are 1.78 million people. So it looks like a tiny dot. And if you compare it with the total population in Hong Kong, which is 7.5 million, that's even tinier than you have seen before. So people will raise the question whether it's worthy to launch mass tests in Hong Kong. If you feel interesting about this project, you can scroll down after the talk. Yes. So the next thing I'm going to introduce you is about QGIS. I think a lot of you might have used QGIS before because it's a very nice tool and easy to do different and nice map in QGIS with shapefile and TIFF file. You can create lots of beautiful maps. But today I'm going to introduce you like another way how I use QGIS to do graphics. So 4 years ago, when I still worked for Reuters, we have a graphic about the missile forces in China. So we download a PDF from the national analysis from the National Defense of the United States. So it's saying that these are the missile force like China. These are the missiles China has. It's like along these little dots, and these are the missiles US has. So this is a simple comparison between the US and China. And in the articles, we say that the missile force in China actually outperformed the US. And for here, we highlight some important missiles launched by China. If you can see, DF-16 is the name of a type of missile. And as here, you can tell that it's around like 1,000 kilometers range. But it's not that easy to tell the readers how 1,000 kilometers can reach to. So in order to show that, so this is a short description of those highlight missiles. So in order to get a better idea for our readers, I use QGIS to create the buffers. So if I select the buffer tool and type 1,000 kilometers, I can get this inner shape. This is a line that how the missiles can reach to. So, and then this is the second range is about 2,150 kilometers long. And then I add a base map. So with this base map and with the buffer here, it's very easy to see that how the F-16 can reach to. So as you can see here, and I add a scrolling here. So if you scroll up, you can see the first highlight is the DF-16. Then you can see with DF-16, China can strike targets in Taiwan, and these blue dots are the military base of US. So it can also target Okinawa. And with the DF-26, it can reach to Guam. This is another US military bases. And yeah, it can also reach Australia. So I think that's much straightforward and easy to understand how China's missiles can reach to. And the next one I'm going to introduce you is Blender. I think some of you might think, oh, Blender is about the 3D models, and you need to do a lot of complicated work in order to do some models. But sometimes we will try to make it easier to use in the newsroom. And I'm not an expert of Blender. I don't know how to create a human in the Blender, but it can help me to create some beautiful maps. For example, we have a project about the subdivided apartments in Hong Kong. So basically, we are telling people how tiny the apartment here is, and the government have plenty of the land, but it's very hard, but they don't build much land for the citizens. but they don't build much residential area for citizens. I get this nice TIFF file from the government website. It's the digital elevation TIFF. So with here, you can see all these highlighting areas are the mountains. So the little dots here has the highest elevations. So after I process it in the QGIS, I select the ranges. I set up the ranges and create a legend, and then I import it into Blender. It's very easy to create elevation to show people how the terrain is in Hong Kong. So you can see this light blue. Those are the urban area. So those are general people where they live are the residential size, the commercial size. And here the red side is the peak of the mountains. So basically you can see majority parts of Hong Kong are mountains. So I think that some kind of answer the question why Hong Kong has plenty of lands, but they don't build much residential areas. But of course they have other reasons, but this is just show the simple, one of the simple reasons about the natural topography. So yeah, but at the end, we didn't use this map for the final version of the project because the style may look a little bit different. But I think I keep it. I think in the future we will have other projects, and it will be very quick and easy to use. So this is basically the talk I talked today. Thanks for joining. And this is my Twitter. Feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Hey,
yeah,
amazing,
Thank you.
Han. Yeah, you're still live, and we're gonna keep you live for a few more minutes if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. I mean, my first question. First of all, it was amazing to see all stuff around Hong Kong, because usually the talks that we have at Smashing are very much more Europe and Asia, or Europe and US based. So it was interesting to see it a little bit more from our perspective, which was amazing. My first question is very simple. Is your original background, is that more on the design side or more on the development side, or what's kind of your original?
Actually, my major in college was in journalism, and then I follow Alberto Carroll. I don't know if any guy you know him. That he brought me into the world of data visualization, and I feel it's very funny to do the data viz. And actually, I quite interested in doing the coding part. So for most of the time in my team, I'm responsible for the codings and development. And sometimes when I also build, like as I showed before, like very simple data viz, like that's not the art compared with some of my other colleagues, because they do very nice illustrations. But I mostly work on more straightforward and development side of the graphics. Yeah.
Okay, but your original background was still journalism, so your kind of your first entry to anything will still probably also be the kind of story that you want to tell, and then you start actually working from there, rather than the data side. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
With a lot of stuff that you made, kind of it shows. I think that's the background of SCMP. It shows kind of like you have print, and then you have digital, which I think is always difficult for any designer, and with digital now you also, of course, you have mobile. So how do you tackle that? Because especially things which are kind of heavy on the have like specific guidelines or specific strategies to deal with that?
Actually, I think 18% of my time I work on online projects, and there's only a few cases like when we complete an online version, I think, oh, it might be a good chance to make a print version and a back page. Then I will start on back page. We also have some colleagues who only focus on the print. But I feel very grateful that I have the chance to both work on the print and the digital. And because my expert was on online projects, so I spend most of my time on digital part instead of creating the back pages. But I still I think I develop around 3 to 4 back pages every year. So for the rest of the time, I will just focus on digital projects. It's quite time consuming.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it always sounds like. I would love to ask the audience to say goodbye to Han for now, at least with anything that you want to do, whether that is clapping, waving, or some flags. I'd love you to stay backstage, Han, if you want to. I know it's quite late in Hong Kong, but we're doing a little bit of a challenge later. So if you want to hang around, then that would be amazing. And otherwise, thanks very much for your presentation. I loved it.
Thanks for hearing my talks today. Thanks, everyone.